Hey, what's going on, guys? All right, so we have a myriad of spaces that happened this morning that we're going to get into. Introducing Myria AI, the integration of AI into Myria, guys. I'm very, very excited about this. One more move forward for a phenomenal project, guys. One of our top picks over on the Patreon. We have weekly picks over there now, guys. Tomorrow we are uploading the next this week's picks, picks of the week, we'll call it, whatever you want to call it. Check it out, guys. Such massive hits like Caspa, Myria, XEN, Zebek, Nadix, and so many more, guys. So check it out. Weekly picks over there. Just uploading the next video tomorrow. Also, if you need mentorship and guidance in this space from someone who's been through multiple bull runs, get over to the Patreon, book yourself in to one of our mentorship coaching calls. They're absolutely free as a Patreon member. So check that out as well, guys. Get all the help that you need, whether it's portfolio structure, exit strategies, how to take profits, when not to take profits, hot wallets, cold wallets, exchanges, how to be proactive with your banks, gas fees, tokenomics, technical analysis, understanding the mental and emotional sentiment in the market and how it drives the market, and so much more, guys. Get the mentorship that you need to become the best possible investor you can be in this space. Again, from someone who's been through multiple cycles. So check that out, guys. The link is down below in the description for that. Also, we're live there every single day. I will see you guys over there. And without further ado, real quick, a little more ado. Shout out to the channel sponsor, Decent Biometric Wallet. 2-for-1 deals on the biometric wallet. You can swap on there, you can take profits on there, and most importantly, you can stake on there and get APY as well. So check that out by using our link down below, guys. Now, without further ado, let's get into this. It's about 40 minutes long. Strap in, strap on, get your popcorn, sit down, and be ready for entertainment. Introducing Myria's AI. I will put this up and I will leave you guys to it. Enjoy.
Alex over here. Great. Well, I don't think 1 minute would hurt. So, yeah, again, welcome to today's AMA. We're really glad that you're tuning in. We've got some exciting news to dig into. It's a new tool that's positioned to change the way that people build in Web3, specifically for game developers. And today we're talking about Mira AI, of course. And now joining me is none other than Myria CTO and co-founder Andrew Silber, aka one of the minds powering this new adaptation of the Myria Developer Suite. So Andrew, how are you? And I'm glad that you're here.
Hey, thanks. I'm good. Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited to be talking about what we've been working on. And yeah, let's just jump right into it.
Let's jump into it. Happy days. So quick one to kick things off. I know that you've dealt with a lot of AI development throughout your very seasoned career. Have you mostly been working on AI in game development, or have you branched out into other applications too?
Well, so just by way of history, my degree actually is in cognitive psychology. So, in layman's terms, it's a lot of AI related stuff. That said, that was a very long time ago before all of the big wave of AI. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm sort of in the spent such a long time in the game space. But I've spent a lot of time in game space doing AI related things as well. I did Field Commander, so I wrote the AI for a turn-based strategy game. I've written a number of AI systems for racing games. I've architected AI dev systems for example, I did a James Bond game, a 007 game years ago, and built an AI system for that. But it's a little bit different from a lot of the AI stuff that's been going on lately. Although I've been tracking it super close, and it's just a subject that I really am excited about.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, totally the perfect person to be speaking about this too. So yeah, today we're going to get into how Myria AI helps developers, especially indie teams and Web 2 devs who are just about dipping into Web 3. But yeah, let's unpack that a little bit. What kind of developer was Myria AI built for, and how does it fit into their everyday workflow, especially for indie developers and early stage teams?
Right. So that's a great question. And so it's really built for all kind of developers. I mean, you should really think of it as just sort of a helpful helpful Web3 expert buddy who's just sitting there next to you, who won't get all judgy. So for Web 2 developers, indie teams and things like that who don't, who are not, these, experienced degens who have a lot of, are deeply steeped in all the jargon and things like that, and who might be a little overwhelmed by, the technology stacks, then you literally can sit and say, hello, agent, I have a Web 2 game. I am new to this. What can you even just tell me what it's about? What can it do for me? And it'll start taking you through that. We've built this system to have access to a lot of documents. It has a lot of access to what they call RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So it can pull all sorts of documents about, migrating Web 2 games to Web 3 and things like that, and then give you an answer in the context that you phrased it. So, for people who are kind of new to the space, then it's really something that I think they'll find helpful. And then for veterans, it also understands the jargon and the shorthand and the lingo. So, if you just say, all right, I'm just gonna, do an airdrop or something like that, it's gonna know what you mean. It doesn't need to, you don't have to explain to it what that sort of thing is. So, and then again, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it actually is able to, help you write code in the Miria ecosystem. And so you can literally ask it to help you write a function which will, manage assets a certain way, or retrieve user data, or do all sorts of different things on the Miria blockchain that you would otherwise have to do either by using the SDK or by using the dev portal, and clicking around through all the menus and stuff.
Yeah, I really imagine that it's also pretty useful on the business development side of things. So whenever we talk to partners, for example, they'll always come with some sort of request like, okay, what is the blurb of the SDK? What sort of value can it provide my project particularly? And so, we could always send them a short bullet point set of what it can do. But then once they start to dig into questions like, okay, well, for my particular game that is built on this chain A, B, and C, how can it help me? So yeah, imagine that jumping in as just a newly acquainted partner or a potential partner into the Miria AI environment could be really helpful for them. Yeah. So what's cool also about Miria AI, I think, is that it doesn't really dumb anything down per se, and it just makes it way more guided and accessible. So, for example, for somebody who's starting out a new NFT project from scratch, how much time and effort do you think that the Miria AI tool set would save them compared to the traditional SDK approach?
Well, so I guess it sort of depends a little bit on, how much they have, how much they've done before. A veteran programmer who's familiar with the SDKs, who's familiar with the space, I would say that it would be on par. Maybe you can offload some of your, the heavy lifting, for boilerplate functions that, you want to write. But for somebody who is certainly more new to it, as I was saying, then it, I think, would save you quite a bit of time, particularly in the reading of documentation. One thing that's always a little bit overwhelming and a bit of a headache is, reading through documentation and wondering, whether it's all still fresh, or whether the APIs have migrated or evolved since the last time they were written. And, you're often left wondering, and the things are often not always presented in the best order. And so, you're not given a good overview of what the whole ecosystem looks like and how things relate to each other. And so I think that, when you can actually just talk with it, talk with the agent, that is, then it literally will, it will figuratively hold you by the hand. It would be weird if it were literal, and guide you through the process. So, so yeah, I mean, I think, for example, if you want it to write, you could tell it, write me a function which will pull and paginate the assets that are owned by a user on the Miria blockchain. Assume that the wallet ID will be passed in, and then the artifact window will slide in from the left and fill up with code, and it will make the assumptions that you provided, such as that the wallet ID will be passed in, and it will refer already to, for example, environment variables which contain your API key or things like that. So it's it takes a lot of the pain out of it, and also just make sure that the function has all of the things that it requires in the format that they're required. Sometimes it's a little ambiguous, especially in a language like JavaScript or TypeScript, where you can sort of pass anything into anything and not find out until runtime, that you've made a mistake or not. So it does that sort of validation.
Yeah, so if there's a digital hand that protrudes out of the screen and starts holding your hand, maybe we should report that and retrain the model to not
that would be
seriously.
Creepy. So, yeah. On the other hand, it could be kind of cool. Huh?
Yeah, if they're
I'll
into
let you know.
that. Yeah. But nonetheless, yeah, that's a huge reduction in overhead. I'd say most people tend to underestimate how long setup usually takes. I think this really changes that. It's great to hear that developers can move from idea to execution without really getting slowed down by the instruction manual. You have those tabletop players who like that sort of thing. They love going through the manual and reading the step by step. But then I could say that maybe 90 to even 95% of developers that we tend to work with like the answers very instantaneously, so that they can focus obviously on other things. In other areas, could you walk us through maybe some common use cases, say like launching an NFT collection? How does Miria AI simplify these steps that are taken by the
right? Sure. So in the case of a collection, if you just literally tell it, I want to create a collection, it will say, great. Sounds like a plan, and probably throw some emoticons in there too. We're trying to tune that back. And then it'll tell you, okay, look, I need a project ID. I need the metadata URL. And if you need more information about that, just say so. I need the contract address for the collection, and a couple of other little pieces of information. And anything that you don't know about, you can just say, oh gosh, you know what? We haven't yet deployed a smart contract for it. Can you take me to that? And then it will probably, what it'll do, and we'll talk about this a little later, it will turn you over to silently under the hood, it will turn you over to another agent, which will say, okay, I'll take you through the process of setting up deploying a smart contract for your for the collection that you want to deploy. So it retains context on that, and then it sort of pops it off the stack, so you can go back to where you were, and then it will feed the data back that you just got. And so it will fill in all of the information for you, and again, this is this is one of the things that also the agent is good at, is that it's also imbued with a lot of different tools. So in addition to being able to write code, it also has full access to the platform. In other words, it has literally the entire SDK compiled in, and so you can ask it to call a function, and it will ask you for the parameters of the function, and then it will go ahead and call it, and then give you the response. So you won't need to write a one-off little piece of code, build a standalone Node.js little application and run it just to do a query or something. So it makes that process a lot easier. And we're working on in terms of things like streamlining every piece of the process. So collections, of course, also require metadata, and metadata right now, usually it's up to the user to host it. So for example, they might put the metadata up on IPFS, which is just a big blob data system. And normally people will manage that themselves. But among the things that we're doing, and I'll get to this when I start talking about the MCP integration, is linking up and giving our agent a direct access to those systems, so that, for example, if you do maintain an IPFS storage bucket for your metadata, you can give our agent access to it, and then it will be able to make the modifications for you, or upload the data for you, or even build the metadata based on some CSV that you upload, and then deploy it out to IPFS, and then link it to your collection. So some of these things are a work in progress, and I do want to point out actually at this moment. So right now, what we're deploying out is a beta version. It's sort of a first look, And some of the features that I'm talking about are already ready already, and some of them are going to be coming online progressively over the next few weeks. We need this period to get feedback from the communities, from some of our developers to actually, figure out, what if there's any edge cases, if there are any issues. I mean, it's software like anything else, so we need to test it up right. So yeah, some of those things, as I mentioned, we'll get to a little bit later, are works in progress, but it's important to realize that it's on our radar. So in other words, we are very much committed to, staying at the cutting edge of where blockchain and AI intersect. And so, to that end, we continually are refining our timeline for which features we plan to roll out when. And so, for anybody here in this chat, if you have requests and things like that, please feel free to paste them in or send them to me on Telegram or whatever. I'd be more than happy to entertain them. So anyway, sorry, I am liable to go off on a tangent. So please.
Yeah, no, tangents are good. Yeah, it makes sense. You're removing the context switching, and then developers could spend less time trying to piece things together and more time actually building stuff. And I really like what you said about, essentially developers have all of these bits of information that make their project unique, but then don't really know where to send it or which route to take or how to put things together. And this is sort of offering a rather fresh way of redirecting it to where it needs to go. And these are typically things that are repeatable anyway, like they follow more or less the same structure. It just kind of clips that process and sends the relevant information to where they want to go. So, which I think is pretty cool. Can you tell me a little bit about how Miria AI helps developers manage on-chain assets once projects are live? So this is more about a post-launch process. Is it just about the launch, or does it support ongoing operations to post-launch?
Yeah, you absolutely can use it post-launch. So the agent, when you log in and when you log in onto the developer portal, then it automatically has full access to everything, all of the project you created, all of the all of the vaults where where you've given it access, and everything is permissions based. And so, if you give it access to certain wallets and vaults and things like that, for example, if you're you have some sort of wallet that your game uses in order to store assets which have been say people have burned them or merged them in order to generate something else, then it goes back into the pool. And so you have a wallet. Well, if you give the agent access to that, then you'll be able to do things like tell it, okay, I want you to you pull out all of the assets which are level 3 and below, and distribute them randomly to other people, or please give me a table of all collections for my given project X and the number of NFTs which have yet to be claimed. Or you can ask it, which NFTs in this collection have seen the most trading in the last week, because we also have access to, obviously the blockchain is an open ledger system. And so, if you want to be able to see which ones are getting more action than others, then you'll be able to ask it for a graph or chart. We are the graphs and chart stuff is something which is on our timeline. It's not part of V1, but it will be coming down the pike. So as far as because a lot of the time, when a project is live, what you want is telemetry and analytics. And so, because we have all of that information, we can put it basically into the model's context and then ask it to generate a report or an analysis based on a whole pile of data that might be much more of a headache. Or you might have to set up, if you use an analytics platform, then you might actually have to set up very special types of structures and data flows in order to be able to get such analyses, which these language models are able to provide in real time.
Yeah, you might have to set up a new employment scheme and hire a new person to do that independently. So yeah, that continuous support is really important. I feel like a lot of tools and projects put a lot of focus on the launch, probably because it's one of the more exciting phases of the release. So they get kind of trigger happy that, okay, we have to put all of our energy into the launch. But there's a tendency to leave developers to figure out the rest in terms of adding and updating content, which could be, as you mentioned, could get pretty messy fast. It could be a major headache if you don't really know how to extract all of this telemetry from how the game is currently performing. So that's really cool to see also. Another tool or rather another function that the tool is really good at is combing through documentation, like we mentioned earlier. And as we know, reading documentation and figuring out SDK methods can be really brutal. So what exactly does it mean that Miria AI lets you use the SDK without reading all of the docs? Like, what does that phrase mean in practice with the tooling?
Right. Well, so, I mean, developers, they love to say RTFM, read the effing manual. But when it comes down to it, we all can be a little bit lazy. And so, one usually will sort of scan the documents and go, oh boy, there's 20 different flavors of this function. I don't know which one to call. I don't know which one, is suitable for my situation. And so, rather than having to comb through and read everything, you literally can just ask it which function will be best if I want to retrieve my all of the users who have such and such in their wallet, or have well, whatever. I mean, in other words, you can put any metadata in that you want and then query based on it. But the point is that very often SDKs have a lot of different functions, or a lot of different versions, and you don't always know which one to use. Or a function call might actually require that you first set up a data structure which is supplied by another function call, and so you have to hop around all over the place. Whereas if you just explain to the agent what you want to do, then it will be able to say, okay, well, look, you need to first retrieve this data, get this data block, then you can pass it on into this function, and it will actually outline how to do that. Additionally, if you tell it, for example, that you want to, say, implement an upgradable NFT experience, and what would be a good way to implement that, so then the agent would be able to say, well, if you want it, it depends on what you want the assets to, what to happen to the assets afterwards, and the requirements based on them. Do you want to have a data table which describes which can be merged with which, and then it can outline for you how to, based on maybe like a merge, write you a function called merge, which will give you two assets, and then it will go through the pains of writing a function which will tell you how to look up which one can be merged with which one, and then actually go through the mechanics of it, and then return a I mean, it's getting a little bit too much into the details, but people would have to supply signatures, and so that involves a separate part of the SDK. So it will say, okay, now we have to put an await here, where we can go and get the signature from the user, and then we can go execute the burn, and then it'll put the assets in the right wallet, put the thing back in the in the storage bin, like I was talking about before, if you're recycling assets after merging them. So in other words, how to implement various game play mechanics, or rather on-chain mechanics, in the context of the Miria SDK. And I think that that will save you hours of poring through and wondering whether or not the SDK is opinionated about how to go about a particular operation.
Yeah, so you're essentially giving them sort of like a verbal flow chart for it to follow without having to program the logic yourself, and having to pore over the documentation to achieve it. Just a sidebar, it also reminds me of a potential match with our other SDKs, like the leaderboard and achievement SDKs, for example, where could you like set a parameter? Oh, I want to identify the players who, like, because you mentioned telemetry earlier on. I'd like to identify players who have achieved milestone A, B, and C, and set something up for them that is maybe different from what the average player gets, or allocate them a special NFT, or provide them burn options for the assets that they currently hold. Maybe it's also a potential use case of the Miria AI without having to do a lot of coding to achieve that?
We wouldn't need to do any coding. So the leaderboard integration isn't something we've done yet, but it's on the radar. But yeah, you absolutely will be able to say, look, I want you to take the top 3 players from this leaderboard and award them, this amount of Miria tokens and these NFTs, and then just, so you can literally award, for example, do events or tournaments and things like that, and then just award the prizes just like that right from the terminal. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, all of that integration is something that we definitely want to have in there.
Very cool. I also heard you say something about, in one of the calls about template-based operations. Could you tell us what that is exactly and how it fits into the general scheme of Miria AI?
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So when I was mentioning those templates, so that's sort of insider baseball as far as the user is concerned. So I know that the article that we posted on Medium actually made reference to our simple agent, the general agent, the coding assistant agent, and those are all actually things which happen transparently to the user underneath the hood. And so among the things that are also sort of happening behind the scenes, which the user is not actually aware of, is that, well, backing up a second, we've discovered that these models are very good. They're good at following instructions and intuiting what tools to use and in what order, but sometimes they go off the rails. And at Miria, we can't really have that. I mean, you don't want it going off and hallucinating some sort of operation that could dump your wallet somewhere or burn everything or whatever. So we have a system which is sort of, you could call it templates, you could call it blueprints. In the code, I think we call it blueprints, which is a gated, guided system for the AI, so that it literally is not able to, if you tell it that you want to perform an airdrop, it knows precisely what steps to take throughout that entire operation, regardless of how much information it thinks it has or doesn't have, or how much you provided it. It's a very, even though it's conversational in its nature, it's also quite on rails. And so it keeps the user from worrying that some step will be missed or things will be executed out of order, because it's literally, when it goes into this blueprint agent, it's actually an agent, one of the agents that's not listed on the Medium article, then it is literally incapable of doing the wrong operation.
Yeah, so like definitely eliminates possibility of by airdrop, do you mean like unload all of the assets to this one player? Or yeah, like you mentioned, I feel like that's some of the things that people are struggling with agentic models nowadays. It's the hallucination step, which is very common. So it's good to know that there's sort of like this hard track that it needs to follow in order to execute. With something like an SDK that probably already knows how to undertake those steps in the right order and in the right manner. Speaking of getting stuck, I know that a lot of devs struggle with managing assets across projects and collections. How does Miria AI simplify that, specifically for visibility and control?
Right. So again, I mean, I sort of because of my tendency to go off on tangents, then some of this would be already things I've already said. But I mean, it comes down to being able to interact with your project's economy in natural language, rather than having to learn a bunch of confusing analytics tools or cryptic menus and arcane and ambiguous nomenclature. And like I said, we're working on the ability for the agent to provide custom graphs and charts and things like that. So, that you'll be able to ask it, to graph the, the movement of, some asset collection or some tokens over time. And really be able to provide you with whatever type of analysis that you want. It is something that it's an ongoing struggle to make sure that it does what you want and not or that it does what you want and not what you say you want. That is to say, sometimes the hallucination thing can creep in unexpected ways. But we're continuing to try to mitigate that. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I think that the key aspect is the natural language. That anybody can sit down at it and without a moment's training and just ask it, hey, how's the game doing? How's the economy? And see what it says. And to be honest, I don't know what it would answer. If you asked it that, but it probably would come up with something good.
Yeah, and I suppose we're not, just talking about, if we're talking about visibility and control, it's not with dealing with these collections. It's not like your average spreadsheet project, because partner developers can create up to 5 collections, I believe, and 50,000 mint transactions per collection per month. And this is an expandable request, so it could even exceed that. So it tends to go up, the amount of tracking that you would need to undertake if you're out there to build a pretty massive collection across different projects. And so maybe this tool is also a way of having all of your things in order and not having to dig through like a sea of data just to find that one thing that you need information about. Additionally, could you tell us more about how the intelligence of the tool is structured? And by that I mean the role that. So the Medium article mentions 3 core agents. You have the general, the coding assistant, and the simple agent. In what way do they collaborate to replace traditional documentation?
Well, that's a good question. And as I said, that is a little bit of inside baseball, because their interaction is completely transparent to the user. So what you don't know is when you're talking is that actually, to the AI assistant, is that it will hand your question over plus whatever context it needs to a specialized agent. And so the 3 that you mentioned, the simple agent, the general agent, and the code assist agent, all have slightly different specialties. The simple agent is one where mostly for quick question and answering based on looking up data or looking up documentation. It really has a very simple, straight, one-directional data flow. You ask it a question, it decides what tool it wants to use, how to look it up, and then just gives you the answer. The general agent is one which can perform the more complex series of operations. You can sort of think of it as a sort of a reflection type of an agent. If any of you have been following the reasoning models, versus some of the more base foundation models, which are not particular reasoning. And so the way that the general agent works is that it goes into a planning loop, and it will continue to iterate and think and ask itself, okay, do I have this? If not, what else do I need? What else do I need in order to accomplish a particular goal? And so that one will take a little bit more time, because like I said, it will loop and loop and loop and ask itself questions, and then it will consult the blockchain, and then it will ask itself another question. And so it definitely is for more complex operations. And then the coding agent is one where, if the if your question is one which is in any way related to code, then it will hand it off to the coding agent, which has RAG hooked up to all of the. It's built a vector database of all of our SDK code, and so depending on what type of question you ask, it knows what to retrieve. I don't know how many of you are familiar with things like vector retrieval and based on cosine similarity, but there's also a lot more complex, more sophisticated algorithms for doing RAG these days. But that's what it's best at. And there's one agent that sits on top of it all, which again is transparent, which is the orchestrator, and that really is more of a classifier. So the first thing it does is anytime you say something to it, it will determine which agent it wants to talk to. And which it should talk to. And in fact, the agents can be suspended in the background and then continue. And when you talk to the orchestrator, it will actually determine whether or not there's an agent. It will offer the request to different agents which have already been spun up, and see which one is the most relevant. And then that agent will say, all right, I got this one. And then it will jump in and take it. So it's just a little bit of under the hood architecture, which the user of the platform might not ever need or want to be aware of. But, some people are kind of gearheads and, are into that sort of thing. So I certainly am.
Yeah, really smart to break it down like that. So you have each agent handling a different layer of complexity. Is that so you don't get shallow answers when you need more detailed ones, and vice versa? You mentioned this was a standard practice nowadays.
Yeah, well, so I mean, without getting too much into the weeds, it turns out that the nature of these language models is that the more you are able to channel their focus, then the better answer you get. If I had just one single agent and gave it a huge pile of tools and a really complex system prompt that handled every different case, then what you'd find is that it would not always come up with the best answers, and it would sometimes, in some cases, choose the wrong tool, and in some cases, it would, when it has like a very long, the more context it has, these AI models sort of suffer from an analogous thing to that we see in cognitive psychology, which is primacy and recency. So things that you hear first have more influence on your overall focus and attention, and things that you've heard most recently. So things that are in the middle kind of get lost. So if you have an enormous context, you have a single agent dedicated to one thing, then some of the stuff in the middle gets lost. It's just the empirical results that communities of people building agents have discovered.
Very cool. Yeah. And how does the AI guided project and collection creation differ from, let's say, a CLI or manual configuration?
Right. Well, so I guess at the risk of sounding like a broken record, for those of people who even remember records,
Well, it was in the middle of the talk.
I remember records, but most of you probably do not. So yeah, I mean, natural language really is a game changer. So CLIs, or manually using VI to edit configuration files are kind of a thing of the past now. I mean, it used to be the case that devs, the programmers, were the guardians of the sacred magic commands, that to execute all of these things, and they, type, and then they're the wizard, and everybody loves them. But now, all of that is handled by by these language models, and so as a result, it's much more accessible to people who are not total gearheads. And then, of course, also one of the things that is that the LLMs can sanity check you. So in other words, if you're typing CLI commands, you throw it in there, and then it's a Hail Mary, and you hope that you type the right stuff in, or you execute a configuration script. Whereas this introduces a new layer of sanity checking to make sure, hey, wait a second, are you sure that you actually meant that you wanted that this collection size, or that buffer size, or whatever it is that you're setting up. I mean, and this is a general truth for all of the new computer use type functionality for LLMs, not just Web3, but certainly for people who are just coming on board with Web3 development. Then setting up a project using regular language, I think, is something that is really going to be quite appealing to them.
Yeah, definitely a case for accessibility. Maybe not everyone is comfortable working from a terminal, or don't even know which projects to load up or which tools to use to start things up. I mean, obviously, game teams have code proficient people, but they might be doing some other tasks, or maybe you would have like a game designer who just wants to poke around and see what's possible without having to go through all of the technical stuffs to begin with. Yeah, so really, really great insight. I think more or less this talk has given a pretty solid view of what Mira AI is doing and where it's headed. Any more final thoughts for the listeners today before we close out?
No, I mean, I think that, I mean, like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions. Come and find me in Telegram, because, once you get me talking about all of this AI stuff, well, AI and games and blockchain, then I can't shut up. So, but I mean, I guess the important thing to take away from this is that, we here at Myria in the tech, in the tech department, we are, very aware and, are following very, very closely all of the latest developments, that have sort of taken the world by storm over the last 2 years. And, we're committed to really bringing that, all of the advantages of that to the Myria ecosystem. So to that end, I mean, I don't know whether, I don't know what time zone everybody is in, but if any of our developers are listening right now and you want to jump in and help us test things out, or if you have feature requests and things like that, then don't be shy. But other than that, yeah, I'm willing to, if anybody has any questions right now that they want me to take, or how are we doing? Yeah, we're doing on time.
Very cool. Yeah, we're way good on time. It'd be really funny if you hooked up Myria AI straight into Telegram and people ask questions. It's actually the bot that are providing the answers. It's just a big spam load of question and answer. But yeah,
I don't know the Telegram API, but I'm pretty sure we could do that. There's enough demand for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be pretty messy though. A lot of people requesting a bunch of different things, or if they had a personal Telegram bot, like just maybe even if it's just the non-coding agents or general knowledge ones, might be interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, big thanks again for taking the time, Andrew, and everybody listening. If you're building in Web3, like Andrew said, and want to spend more time creating and less time troubleshooting, definitely keep an eye on Myria AI. And I wish you all a great day ahead.
Absolutely fantastic, guys. Myria is so much more. Any Web3 gaming project is so much more, especially a platform. It's so much more than just, would I play that game, right? Don't be so provincial. Don't be so one-dimensional. There's so much going on behind the scenes. This is not just a gaming platform. It is a layer 2, guys, right? It's its own ecosystem. Try to remember that, okay? So anyway, let me know what you guys think. And as always, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you need mentorship, get over to the Patreon. We have a mentorship program, coaching calls we do every single day. Check those out. You can book yourself in. It's absolutely free as a Patreon member. And come check out our latest picks, guys. Just uploading the next video for the next microcap gems that are going to pop off. The link is down below. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless.